Using a resistance band for planche training is, in my opinion, perhaps the best way of approaching this super difficult skill. Now, there is a few reasons why I believe so, and there's also a few things to keep in mind when doing band-assisted planche variations, which is what this video today will be all about. Firstly, let's start by discussing why band-assisted planche variations are so very useful. One reason is scalability. These rubber bands come in all kinds of thicknesses. So I have a very skinny one here, a very fat one, and a pretty medium one right here. This basically means that you can choose a suitable thickness for your band according to your level. And when you get stronger, you can change it out for a skinnier band. You can even go so far as to measure the amount of help you're getting from these bands by using a scale. So this band, my planche would be approximately here, and now I'm weighing in at 72.7 kilograms. Without the band, I am 83.8. Now this thick band weighs in at a planche distance about here. I'm about 62 kilograms heavy. And with the skinny band, I'm 78 kilograms heavy. So this is more or less 6 kilograms of help. Now this would obviously depend a little bit on the height from which we are attaching the band. But in most cases, at least I tend to use them on pull-up bars that are about a couple of meters high. Usually I can barely reach them when standing up. So I could measure all of my bands from a similar height and have a slight idea of how much help I'm getting from them. So in this case, I'm getting about 11 kilos from this one, 6 kilos from this guy, and 20 kilos from this guy. And I can combine and match them as I'd please. So 6 plus 11 would be 17, if I'm not mistaken. And 20 plus 11, I wouldn't use that much, which I will get back to why that's not a good idea. But anyways, if I start with this one, which is about 20 kilograms of help, I could go over to these two together, which would be more or less 17. Then I go to this guy, more or less 11. And then lastly, this guy, about 6 kilos. So this would mean there's like 5 kilograms step in between all of these levels, so to say, approximately. So now we talked about the scalability part. And another super useful thing about using bands is specificity. And by that I mean that if we use the bands correctly, which I will get back to, the position we practice in a deloaded manner will be exactly equal to the position and how it would look like without the band assistance. If we get help from the bands in the direction of gravity, starting from our center of gravity, which I will get back to, we will necessarily need to have the exact same position both with and without the band, meaning we practice the exact same position that we want to achieve. So if we use a band-assisted full planche, the full planche position will be exactly equal in both cases with and without the band. And that's not the case if we're using, for example, a tuck planche. The angle in our shoulders will be different, the angle in our wrists will be different from the full planche. So I'm not at all saying that you should just start by practicing full planches band assisted, because that's not a good idea, and I will get further back into this. But it's super useful as an intermediate step in between progressions in order to gain more awareness and strength in the next step in the progression ladder. So for example, in going from a tuck planche to an advanced tuck planche, or from a straddle planche to a full planche, an intermediate step would be to use band-assisted version of the progression that you are progressing to. And the last reason why band-assisted planche variations are super useful is injury prevention, believe it or not. And it has to do with the specificity like we previously discussed. Because, as I said, the position you're practicing when you're doing it band-assisted is exactly equal to the not band-assisted variation. This means that, especially for our wrists and our elbows, being able to practice this exact position but deloaded, it's like we practice it weighing less, means that we get to use some time to get used to this position and develop strength without putting as much load on our joints in this position. So we get more time to adapt our joints in the specific position that we want to develop strength in. For example, if I'm going from a straddle planche to a full planche, the angle in my wrists and the pressure on my elbows will be much greater due to the increased lean I get when I'm going from a straddle planche to a full planche. So if I first practice the full planche band assisted, I will still have the same angle in all of my joints, but let's say I'm using these two guys, so about 17 kilograms of help. So I would basically be able to train this exact position only 17 kilograms lighter, which means that I can adapt my joints without the same risk of injury. Now let's move on to the juicy stuff, how we use these bands in the most efficient manner possible. Like I said, if we do it correctly, the position that we train band assisted will be exactly equal to the not band assisted variation. But we need to keep a few things in mind in order for this to be true. Like I discussed, we want the band to help us in the direction of gravity and from our center of gravity. Now our center of gravity changes a little bit through the progressions, but most likely it would be somewhere between our navel and our lower hips, usually somewhere in between that. So I usually just put them around my waist, and that will be more or less good enough in most cases. So wrap the band around more or less our hips. And the second thing is, in order for the band to help us in direction of gravity, which is perpendicular to the ground, meaning straight up, we can't be placing our hands over here. We can't be placing our hands over here either. Our hands will necessarily need to be directly under our center of gravity, meaning that if we place our hands directly under where the band is attached, in this case around here, now you can see the band is angled, but when I lean into, for example, a tuck planche, it's more or less directly upwards or perpendicular to the ground, which is what we want. So if you follow these two rules, wrap the band around your hips, place your hands directly under the attachment of the band, then you're good to go, in most cases. I even do this for, you can do them for half lay planches, or you can even do them for full planches. And as you saw in both of those cases, the band more or less was perpendicular to the ground. There might be small differences, but there's a huge difference from this. And if you would place your hands over here, like a lot of people do, or even far away back here, or even if you put your bands around your legs like this, is a very bad idea. It will help you in a very inefficient way because it's very dissimilar to how you would activate your muscles in an actual planche position. So you can use this for all variations by following these two simple steps. So that was more or less my opinion on using bands for planche training. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and let me know in the comment section if you are using bands, if you have used them, what your experiences are with them, if you feel like you've used them in the wrong way, or whatever comes to your mind. Also make sure to check out my other planche tutorial. You have one right here, which is intermediate to advanced, going through a bunch of different progressions from tuck planche to full planche, and you have one here specifically aiming at learning the tuck planche. Not sure if you heard the coffee machine growling in the background, but anyways, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.